So, you might have heard that Yellowstone National Park is sitting on top of a giant supervolcano. That's a reason why the area can boast powerful geysers and hot springs. But it also means that underneath Yellowstone, there is an enormous magma chamber. In 2015, researchers from the University of Utah found out that this chamber was much bigger than everyone had previously thought. They even found one more reservoir with magma under the top one. Apparently, the more spacious the chambers are, the more magma they contain. Together, the two reservoirs store a glob of magma that could easily fill the Grand Canyon not once, but 11 times. But you know the most worrying thing about the magma chambers? They tend to push against the ground above them. As a result, the land in Yellowstone rises about 1 to 2 inches a year. On top of that, Yellowstone has the status of an active volcano, and its volcanic explosivity index, yes, there is one, is 8 out of 8. Such a high number means that if this volcano erupted, it would be an apocalyptic event. To put it into perspective, the eruption of Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991, which is considered the most powerful in living memory, was given a mere 6 on the volcanic explosivity index. Ha, loser. Now, let's figure out if there's anything to worry about. In March 2023, the University of Utah seismograph stations recorded 354 earthquakes in the entire region of Yellowstone National Park. Sounds like a lot. But keep in mind that the most impressive event of the month was a mini earthquake of magnitude 3.7. It was part of a swarm of 106 earthquakes that began on March 29th and continued until the end of the month. Yep, earthquakes apparently also come in swarms, so be aware. Experts say that Yellowstone's seismic activity is, well, kind of more active than usual, but it's really nothing serious. A geophysicist working at Yellowstone Volcano Observatory called Michael Pollan claims that the volcano won't erupt anytime soon. For this to happen, there must be enough magma ready to erupt beneath the surface. Whew. There should also be enough pressure to cause this magma to rise. But neither of these conditions exist today. According to the expert, Yellowstone is stable now. At the same time, Pollan and his team are keeping track of all kinds of underground activity, looking for warning signs of possible eruptions. Some of them can be the frequency of earthquakes and ground deformation. Thousands of mini earthquakes, coupled with extreme changes in the surface of the ground in that area, can be alarming. The team also monitors the temperature of the park's thermal features. That's another noteworthy sign of a potential disaster: park-wide changes in geyser activity, as well as gas and thermal emissions. So, despite the media claims that Yellowstone is due to erupt soon because the last eruption happened 70,000 years ago, that's not how volcanoes work. Experts say that it's one of the most popular misconceptions about volcanoes. They don't follow timelines. If a supereruption did happen, though, the most worrying thing for us would not be the lava flows, and not an earthquake that would most likely accompany the natural disaster. No, the worst consequence of such a supereruption would be ash and ashfall. Let's have a look at what it was like when the Yellowstone volcano erupted many years ago. There have been at least 3 supereruptions in the history of the volcano. The most powerful of them was 2,500 times more devastating than the terrifying eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington state in 1980. As for the most recent supereruption, it was dubbed the Lava Creek eruption. It formed the Yellowstone Caldera after spewing out an insane amount of dust, volcanic ash, and rock into the air. Recently, scientists have also learned about 2 other previously unknown supereruptions that happened around 9 and 8.7 million years ago. The younger of the 2 is now considered to be the largest recorded event of the whole Snake River Yellowstone volcanic province. Anyway, let's have a look at what was going on all those millions of years ago. Because I wasn't around then, so we're all assuming this stuff based on evidence. The first signs of the disaster appeared long before the catastrophe broke out. For thousands of years, the heat had been welling up from within the planet's insides. It had been melting rock beneath the planet's crust and leaving behind huge chambers. They were filled with a pressurized mixture of semi-solid rock, magma, water vapor, and different gases, including carbon dioxide. All this scorching underground soup was expanding since more and more magma arrived with time. The land over the volcanic system was rising upward almost unnoticeably. A year before the supereruption, Yellowstone gave a warning, a burp maybe? But that long ago, there was no one who could interpret these signals. Plus, those alarming processes were mostly going on underground. For example, decompression releases gas bubbles. While bursting, such bubbles can often power particular kinds of eruptions. Months before the eruption, small-scale earthquakes became more frequent and more intense. The ground in many spots all over the supervolcano got hotter than it used to be. Surface lakes and groundwater also became warmer. If people had been around at that time, they would have noticed unusual steam fogging in that area. Not long before the eruption started, the growing pressure pushed the ground over the magma chamber up. This created a dome-shaped uplift. Narrow cracks started to open along the edges of this dome. Imagine opening a bottle of soda after you've shaken it. Something like that was happening near the volcano. Think Mentos and Diet Coke. The pressure was released through the fractures when gases were bursting out from under the surface. So right before the disaster, the ground around the Yellowstone volcano lifted. Geothermal pools and geysers heated up to boiling temperatures and got more acidic than usual. The magma started to rise toward the surface. At one point, the rock roof of the magma chamber couldn't resist anymore, and the eruption kicked off. Small but constant tremors began to move the ground days before the catastrophe. But the real shaking didn't start until several minutes before the eruption. With a deafening roar, a massive column of lava and ash hurled up into the air. Within several minutes, a pyroclastic flow rushed across the area at a hurricane-force speed. Such a flow is a liquid mixture of half-solid lava pieces, volcanic ash, and hot, expanding gases. It looked like an extremely hot, toxic snow avalanche. With a temperature of about 1,300 degrees, it was burning everything in its path. The volcano kept pumping ash for days on end. For all living creatures, ash fallout was one of the most dangerous consequences of the eruption. Volcanic ash turns into glassy cement within seconds of being inhaled. Most animals didn't have a chance to survive. Even thick trees started to collapse under the weight of this dense substance. It only took a couple of days until a thick layer of ash covered huge territories. After the ash got into the stratosphere, the temperatures all over the world started to drop. The eruption was rich in sulfur, which is an effective sunblocker. That's why it soon got so cold that there was no summer in the whole world for the next several years. Animals couldn't find food and clean water. This natural disaster, called the Gray's Landing supereruption, was colossal. That's how researchers described it in their recent studies. It affected a huge territory. The streams of lava enameled an area as large as New Jersey in scorching hot volcanic glass. It instantly sterilized the land surface, wiping out all the plant life that had been thriving there before. Now, if such an eruption were to happen these days, it would cover Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming with almost 3 feet of toxic volcanic ash. Many regions would be plunged into darkness. Even the coast, where most Americans live, would experience problems with the spread of the ash cloud. It would destroy crops and contaminate pastures, ruin power lines and electrical transformers. Well, so I'm sure you'll agree with me, it's a good thing that such a disaster isn't expected to occur anytime soon. Hey, we got enough other stuff on our plate. If you've ever been to Yellowstone National Park, you were probably mesmerized by its geysers, which spew superheated water and steam high into the air. But an even more intriguing thing actually hides underground. I'm talking about that underfoot plumbing system that makes those grand eruptions possible. About that, there's good news. Recently, researchers have succeeded in mapping the national park's hydrothermal plumbing system with the help of a giant flying magnet. As a result, scientists have managed to document all these features in stunning detail. The thing is, Yellowstone houses the world's largest hydrothermal system. It contains over 10,000 features, like geysers, mud pots, hot springs, and steam vents. They're fed by a network of underground water pathways. Those get overheated by magma flowing underground. It causes the water to rise to the surface. Now, no one actually knows much about the workings of this system, but the newly created maps might finally shed light on it. Experts explain that their knowledge of Yellowstone has a subsurface gap. That's why it's often called a mystery sandwich. Scientists know quite a lot about the features on the surface because they can observe them directly. And they know what's going on in the magmatic and tectonic system several miles below the surface. But they haven't figured out what's happening in the middle yet. So, I must tell you about that giant flying magnet used for research. It's known as SkyTem. It was attached to a helicopter and flown over Yellowstone several hundred times, scanning the ground below. The magnet is made up of an 82-foot-wide charged wire loop. Its main task is to generate a strong electromagnetic field. And since different kinds of material, like water or rock, respond to this field differently, scientists managed to create a few subsurface maps for the first time ever. The mapping technique also allowed the researchers to differentiate between magma and bedrock, since they have a bit different magnetic properties. And the team got a chance to see how the magma and water interact and create those mind-blowing geological features on the surface. The team got high-resolution maps to a depth of around 500 and 2,300 feet, and low-resolution maps showing what's going on at a depth of up to 1.5 miles. At the same time, the researchers think that the hydrothermal system itself may stretch as far as 3 miles below the surface. If they're right, it means they've only mapped the top half of Yellowstone's plumbing system. Anyway, remember how I said that scientists know pretty much about the bottom part of the Yellowstone sandwich? They have such a good idea about the tectonic plates and deep fault lines because the park's frequent earthquakes provide them with a lot of opportunities to study different phenomena. In July 2021, for example, more than 1,000 earthquakes rocked the area. These days, the team of researchers knows much more about some famous features, like the Old Faithful Geyser or the Grand Prismatic Spring. They've also found out that individual hydrothermal features on the surface can actually be connected to others, which can be as far as 6 miles away from them. Another interesting discovery is that even though Yellowstone geysers and hot springs vary in size, shape, color, volatility, and chemical composition, they are mostly fed by very similar underground sources. That means that the difference between the features appears closer to the surface. Now, I'm sure you've seen the iconic image of Yellowstone with a large rainbow-colored spring, fiery orange at its edges. So what makes these hot springs so colorful? Surprisingly, these awesome hues come from microscopic creatures. The temperatures in the springs are so high, they can easily and quickly cook you. Plus, the water there is super acidic, like the liquid in a car battery. But there are certain types of heat-loving microbes that don't mind these crazy conditions. You can even say they're thriving there. So every ring of a different color is, in most cases, a ring inhabited by different bacteria. And each species is adapted to a particular temperature or pH level, which measures how acidic this or that environment is. For example, take the Grand Prismatic Spring, yes, the iconic one. Its rainbow hues likely hint at the diversity of microbes living there. So, starting from the center of the hot spring, you can see a beautiful aquamarine color there. That's where the water temperature is the highest, reaching 189 degrees Fahrenheit, because this area is right over the underground water source. The water there is too hot even for microbes. That's why what you see is mostly clear water. As for the reason for its blue color, it's the same as why the sky is blue. Sunlight hits the surface of the water and the light scatters, but the blue light scatters the most, getting reflected back to your eyes. Now, the next ring of color is yellow, all thanks to certain cyanobacteria. The temperature in this yellow ring reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit. If the conditions in the hot spring were a bit different, These bacteria would create a blue-green hue thanks to a green pigment called chlorophyll. But since the sunlight hitting the spring is too intense, the bacteria start producing another type of pigment. It's called carotenoids. And guess what? It acts as a sunscreen for the bacteria. And since this pigment is orange, the normally green bacteria get a yellowish hue. And finally, we've got that bright orange color closer to the edges of the prismatic spring. It's a bit cooler there, around 149 degrees Fahrenheit. In this part of the spring, you can find several types of bacteria. They all produce substances that give the spring this bright orange color. And finally, right at the edges of the spring, the temperature is cooler, around 131 degrees, and a greater variety of microbes can survive there. All of them combined give the edges of the spring that red-brown hue. But scientists believe that people and their activity may have influenced the colors of Yellowstone's hydrothermal features. For example, in the past, the temperatures in the Morning Glory Pool used to be much higher than they are today. That's why its color was a deep blue. But trash has started to accumulate in the pool, and some of it clogged the vent. This caused the temperatures to drop, which led to microbial growth. As a result, that pretty blue color turned into orange-yellow. As for Yellowstone's geysers, the most famous one is called Old Faithful. It got this name at the end of the 19th century because of how regular its eruptions were. This geyser is more active than the others, erupting about 20 times a day. Each of these magnificent events lasts from 1 to 5 minutes, and the fountain of steaming water can reach a height of 180 feet. Now, while talking about Yellowstone National Park, we can't but mention Yellowstone supervolcano, right? Supervolcanoes appear when huge volumes of magma are trying to escape from deep underground. Eventually, they burst through Earth's surface. Sometimes all this magma gets stuck, unable to break through the planet's crust. And then, massive pools of pressurized magma gather at a depth of several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. At one point, a super eruption goes off. You don't necessarily want to be around for that. Over the past 50 years, the Yellowstone caldera has risen almost 3 feet. It shouldn't alarm you, though. Experts are sure it's a natural behavior for Yellowstone. Periods of dome-shaped uplift are followed by the caldera lowering. Scientists think the supervolcano doesn't present any danger at the moment. For an eruption to happen, the magma inside has to be at least 50% molten. With Yellowstone, this number is just 5 to 15%. Even better, a recent study made the researchers believe the hotspot might be in a state of decline right now, even despite all the breathing and dome-raising activity. There have been at least 3 other super eruptions in the history of Yellowstone volcano. They happened 2.1 million, 1.3 million, and 640,000 years ago, long before video. The most recent super eruption was dubbed the Lava Creek eruption. It formed the Yellowstone caldera after spilling out 240 cubic miles of rock, dust, and volcanic ash. No thanks, I'll pass.
The latest super eruption of Yellowstone occurred 640,000 years ago, and it was long before Homo sapiens saw the light of day. But we were around during another, no less devastating natural disaster. This super eruption took place on the island of Sumatra around 74,000 years ago. That's when an erupting supervolcano wreaked havoc on huge territories, sending up plumes of debris and ash that spread for thousands of miles and caused temperatures on the planet to plummet. The effects of this super eruption were visible as far away as southern Africa. Experts believe they could have impacted early humans there. By the time the volcano erupted, our ancestors had already been using stone tools and had likely known how to produce yarn. And some specialists even think that the Toba super eruption was so powerful it could push our ancestors to the brink of extinction. They claim that Toba might be the largest volcanic eruption to occur on Earth within the last 2 million years. The eruption disgorged so much pyroclastic rock it would be enough to cover the entire United States to the depth of a 1-story house. About a third of that deposit piled up on northern Sumatra, while a lot more ended up beneath the floor of the Indian Ocean. The super eruption left an elliptical crater lake around 60 miles long. The caldera is so large it's hard to feel that you're indeed in a volcano. Pumice deposits from the eruption remain in the canyon walls and go deep below the ground. There aren't many arguments about the amount of pumice and ash involved in this disaster. At the same time, experts aren't sure how much sulfur ended up in the atmosphere. Even some sulfur layers in the polar ice could be potential candidates, but so far, scientists haven't found any connection between them and Toba. But let's get back to the dramatic impact the super eruption had on early humans. It turns out some not only survived but even thrived after this natural catastrophe, at least judging by the artifacts they made during and after the eruption. The disaster might not have posed a serious threat to those of our ancestors who took refuge along the coast. Genetic evidence hints that modern humans descend from a few thousand people that ventured out of Africa around 60,000 years ago. Why just a few thousand? According to some experts, the rest of our ancestors could have been devastated by the Toba eruption. After all, the supervolcano spewed out 1,000 cubic miles of dust and rock in a flash, leaving a scar in the ground that was dozens of miles wide. All that dust and sulfur Toba sent into the atmosphere potentially cooled the surface of our planet, which led to the appearance of glaciers and the lowering of Earth's sea levels. And since Toba might have had an important role in shaping humankind, scientists have been working hard trying to understand precisely how early humans reacted to this disaster. In 2011, several researchers found an enigmatic soil sample in South Africa's Pinnacle Point, an archaeological site overlooking the Indian Ocean. This sample contained some volcanic ash. After examining the layer, they found more than 400,000 artifacts left by early humans. Those ranged from heat-treated stone tools to signs of fire and animal bones. Based on this finding, the team suggested that early humans on the South African coast thrived after the eruption, living in that area for thousands of years and improving their tools. The region might have served as a refuge during and after the Toba eruption. A 2009 study suggested that the eruption could have lowered global temperatures by 14 degrees Fahrenheit. It would have made survival tough elsewhere in Africa. If there had been a volcanic winter, it wouldn't have been as cold along the coastline. On the other hand, newer studies claim that Toba spewed out so much sulfur into the atmosphere that the resulting aerosols could have stuck together, which would have limited their cooling effect in the long term. In other words, right after the eruption, temperatures would have plummeted, but only in some regions. And after 3 years or so, the effects of the eruptions would have calmed down altogether, becoming not dangerous to humans. Well, apparently, more research is needed. Meanwhile, let's figure out if we should watch out for any volcanoes these days. Last year, thousands of small earthquakes shook the ground near Iceland's Svartsengi geothermal power plant. Magma rose to the surface there, and now it has opened wide fractures slicing through the small town of Grindavik. The ground there is still swelling, and an eruption might happen with little notice. But of course, that's not all. Over the planet, 45 other volcanoes keep rumbling. For example, Italy's Vesuvius, that infamous thing that finished the city of Pompeii in 79 CE. Over the last 17,000 years, the volcano has experienced 8 explosive eruptions, followed by powerful pyroclastic flows, dense masses of super hot ash, lava fragments, and gases flowing at high speeds. The volcano's last eruption happened in 1944. Mount Rainier is one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the USA. Its high elevation, chemical composition, and proximity to Washington's Seattle and Tacoma suburbs, and the volcano's ability to produce massive pyroclastic flows make Mount Rainier a threat to consider. The heat from this volcano could potentially melt the ice and snow covering it, leading to rapid downstream flows of debris, mud, and rocks. The Novarupta volcano in Alaska's Katmai National Park and Reserve formed in a 1912 eruption, which was the world's largest in the 20th century. The volcano sent almost 7 cubic miles of ash and debris into the air. It also produced such a powerful ash flow that it created the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. Mount Pinatubo is located in a populated region in the Philippines. It became notorious after a 1991 massive eruption, which was the second largest eruption of the 20th century. More than 700 people lost their lives during that natural disaster. Today, more than 21 million people live within 62 miles of Pinatubo. Mount Agung, a continuously erupting volcano in Indonesia, had its last major eruption in 1963. It was one of the most tragic eruptions in the country's history. It lasted for 11 months, producing ashfall and pyroclastic flows that led to the loss of more than 1,000 lives and serious property damage. People saw ash plumes above the volcano throughout 2018, following the eruption in November 2017. Japan's Mount Fuji hasn't erupted since 1707. That year, a massive earthquake likely set it off. In 2014, experts warned that Fuji could be at risk of another eruption following the 9-magnitude earthquake that shook Japan in 2011. Experts believed the earthquake had raised pressure below Fuji. The eruption in 1707 sent so much ash and debris into the air that all this mass even reached Tokyo. Should Fuji erupt again, it would affect more than 25 million people in the surrounding areas. The eruption of Washington's Mount St. Helens in 1980 was one of the most destructive volcanic events in U.S. history. 57 people, as well as thousands of animals, lost their lives during that natural disaster. The eruption also destroyed around 200 square miles of forest. Experts think that Mount St. Helens' history of massive eruptions means that future catastrophes are bound to happen. The next explosive eruption might send large amounts of ash all over the Pacific Northwest. No wonder the volcano is under close monitoring. One of Indonesia's most active volcanoes, Mount Merapi, has been erupting for centuries. NASA claims that the biggest risk of this volcano is pyroclastic flows, which can spread over vast areas and harm loads of people. For the last time, Merapi erupted in January 2024, sending plumes of smoke into the air. These days, more than 24 million people live in the area surrounding this volcano.
So, you notice anything weird? Recently, there have been alarming changes in the water levels in different parts of Yellowstone Lake. At the same moment, the water level can be rising on one side of the lake and falling on the other. Ooh, it looks as if the lake basin gets lifted by some underground forces. Can it be a sign of a looming disaster? Geysers, mud ponds, and hot springs turn Yellowstone National Park into some extraterrestrial world. And all these wonders are fueled by a mighty supervolcano. Supervolcanoes produce super eruptions. When it happens, they launch more than 240 cubic miles of ash, molten rock, and hot gases up into the air. To make it easier to imagine, 4 super eruptions could fill the Grand Canyon to the brim. The Yellowstone giant was thought to be responsible for at least 3 enormous eruptions and countless smaller ones. In that region, the volcanic deposits are scattered over tens of thousands of miles. Scientists believe they had been created by many weak eruptions. But after doing more research, experts found out these deposits had been left by 2 previously unknown super eruptions. Those probably took place about 9 and 8.7 million years ago. This discovery means that the area around the Yellowstone volcano used to face a super eruption every 500,000 years. But over the last 3 million years, the hotspot has seen only 2 super eruptions. It makes scientists believe these catastrophic events are slowing down, or just maybe one is overdue. Anyway, if the Yellowstone supervolcano went off with as much power as it had 2.1 million years ago, it would spit out more than 588 cubic miles of boiling lava. That's more than 4,500 times the volume of Sydney Harbor. That's a lot of lava. Whether it's likely to happen or not is another question. There's no doubt that something is going on with the volcano. The water level changes in Yellowstone Lake mean the caldera is lifting under the surface. And the caldera is what's left over after a volcano erupts and then collapses. The Yellowstone caldera is not just going up, creating a dome-shaped uplift. It also moves up and down in a kind of breathing motion. It might be because the magma is seeping into the crust, or because this magma is heating up the Yellowstone hydrothermal system, making it expand and raise the crust. Yellowstone has the status of an active volcano. Its volcanic explosivity index is 8 out of 10. Such a high number means that if this volcano erupted, it would be an apocalyptic event. Right before the disaster, the ground around the national park would lift. Geothermal pools and geysers would heat up to boiling temperatures and get more acidic than usual. The magma would start to rise toward the surface. At some point, the rock roof of the magma chamber wouldn't be able to resist anymore, and the explosion would kick off. A massive column of lava and ash would shoot up to a height of over 16 miles. After that, the volcano would keep pumping ash for days on end. The mixture of lava, ash, and gas would be hotter than 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. It would travel through the area at a speed of 300 miles per hour, faster than a racing car. The air near the center of the eruption would heat up to 570 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the most dangerous consequences would be ash fallout. Volcanic ash can turn into glassy cement within seconds after being inhaled and getting in the lungs. People and animals would have problems with breathing. Okay, so that's an understatement, just so you know. Buildings would start to collapse under the weight of this dense substance. It would take just several days until a 10-foot layer of ash covered the territory of about 50 miles around the center of the eruption. After the ash got into the stratosphere, the temperatures all over the world would start to drop. If the eruption was rich in sulfur, an effective sunblocker, it would get so cold there would be no summer in the entire world for the next several years. The monsoon seasons would change. Agriculture would face serious problems. There would be issues with food supplies. Over the past 50 years, the Yellowstone caldera has risen almost 2 feet. It shouldn't alarm you, though. Experts are sure it's a natural behavior for Yellowstone. Periods of dome-shaped uplift are followed by the caldera lowering. Scientists think the supervolcano doesn't present any danger at the moment. For an eruption to happen, the magma inside has to be at least 50% molten. With Yellowstone, this number is just 5 to 15%. The probability of the eruption is 1 in 730,000. Safe to say, it's a long shot. Even better, a recent study made the researchers believe the hotspot might be in a state of decline right now, even despite all the breathing and dome-raising activity. Still, there have been tons of discussions about what people could do to prevent the disastrous supereruption from happening. And the most popular and seemingly effective idea was to cool the Yellowstone supervolcano down. Unfortunately, there's a catch. The volcano leaks out only 70% of the heat which comes from its magma-filled chambers, but the rest of the heat stays inside. As soon as it reaches a particular threshold, the volcano erupts. If it was possible to extract at least 35% of the Yellowstone volcano's heat, the eruption could be avoided. The cooler the magma is, the thicker and stickier it gets. It stops being so fluid and doesn't try to get out to the surface anymore. After considering these facts, NASA scientists came up with a plan. They suggested drilling a 6 miles deep well and pumping down cold, pressurized water. The temperature of the water that would get back to the surface would be approximately 662 degrees Fahrenheit. This way, the heat would be gradually extracted from the volcano. And if a geothermal plant was built on the site, it would generate plenty of electric power. It would be very simple to produce, and its price would be very alluring, about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. At first glance, it was an amazing idea. But sometime later, it started to receive a lot of criticism. Imagine drilling through the Earth's crust, getting deeper and deeper, and then wham bam, you hit a hypothermal pocket. Uh-oh, get ready for a catastrophe. This can release gases that are likely to cause a series of super powerful explosions. In the worst-case scenario, it may even trigger a full-scale volcanic eruption. Now, you already know about its catastrophic outcomes, from fountains of lava and avalanches of molten rocks to climate changes all over the globe. Yeah, not good. Or let's say you're drilling a well to deliver cold water to the volcano, and then you suddenly hit its magma chamber. In this case, instead of cooling the giant down, you'll make the top of the magma chamber much more fragile than it used to be, and the whole construction will be at risk of collapsing at any moment. And don't forget that your drilling may also release toxic gases. They often accumulate at the top of the reservoir with magma. Can it get any worse? Well, yes it can. The whole process would stretch for more than 16,000 years. This method is too risky to cool the volcano down as fast as people would probably want. And scientists aren't even 100% sure that when the cooling system construction is finished, the volcano will stay cold for at least another 100 years. And last but not least, the project of making the Yellowstone supervolcano a bit cooler would cost a mind-boggling $3.5 billion. A huge price for something that might not work out altogether. Oh, by the way, Yellowstone isn't the only volcano that has a lava dome that's lifting at the moment. Lava domes are created when magma gets to the surface and then gathers around the vent. Scientists have found one of those inside an underwater volcano in Japan. This dome is more than 2,000 feet high and more than 6 miles wide. Even though the Japanese supervolcano seems to be sleeping, experts don't let their guard down. A volcanic system can go from being calm and docile to teetering on the edge of an eruption in the blink of an eye. Another massive dome is growing in the central Andes, on top of the planet's largest active magma store. The Altiplano Puna Plateau, well there's a tongue twister, and where the dome was found, is the second highest plateau in the world, and the dome itself is more than half a mile tall. You might wonder how come experts have known nothing about this enormous uplift until recently. The answer is simple. It was hidden within the plateau. It's an arid region littered with volcanoes, and it stretches for thousands of miles. Yep, another case of hiding in plain sight.
The ocean is turning red hot. You try to get closer for a better look, but you start feeling the air getting hotter and hotter, like reaching into an oven. And the sand is so hot that your rubber slippers start melting. The ocean's somehow turned into steamy, hot, gooey lava. You start running inland and see a frenzy of people running wild. See, in reality, lava is made of molten rocks from below the Earth's surface. Deep inside our planet, like the distance between New York and Philadelphia deep, the underground heat from the core melts rocks the same way the sun melts ice cream. When these rocks melt, their temperatures can reach around 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. But don't worry, that only happens really deep under the ground, and only in some specific areas, mostly around the Atlantic Ocean. And it only pops out of the ground when there's so much pressure that it flows up to the surface as a gooey orange super hot liquid called lava that usually erupts through a volcano's neck. But somehow, the entire ocean is made of lava now. And although from a really far away distance, it looks pretty cool to look at, it's really dangerous. First of all, say goodbye to the beautiful blue waves and the ocean currents. Unlike water, lava is thicker, closer to creamy peanut butter in texture, so the wind can't move it around like it used to. But that also means that nothing can sink or swim in it. So even if some ocean creatures could withstand the super high temperatures of lava, they won't be able to live inside of it. They'll either be submerged or float on the surface instead, depending on their density. So, all our marine friends and other creatures that used to call the ocean home will need to find another body of water to live in if they want to survive. Actually, the only animals on this planet that could possibly survive the heat of lava would be the tardigrades. These cute microscopic creatures can survive in any extreme environment on this planet. From frozen icy glaciers to hot and fiery volcanoes. They can even survive in outer space under the cosmic rays. You run away from the beach along with everyone else nearby. The atmosphere is getting thicker, and it's not easy to see around you. You think to yourself, I should have stayed home. But home isn't exactly safe either. The heat radiating from all the lava alone would be intolerable for miles. So no more houses by the sea and beach resorts. You're gonna want to make sure you live as far away from the ocean as possible. Most of the coastal cities would become instantly uninhabitable, especially areas touching the ocean with more than one side. Places like Florida, California, and Central America would become mostly unbearable to live in. And that's not to mention island life. Most islands would be so hot that no animal or plant could survive. 97% of the planet was made up of ocean water, and it now all turned to lava. No place on Earth can hold snow anymore, as the planet would look like a glowing orange lava ball. Temperatures would rise so much that the furthest place from the shores and even the highest peaks will still feel like the hottest day in a desert. As you keep running away from the ocean, you realize that maybe you're dreaming, but you look at your skin and see so much redness. Even if you run for miles, the heat will still catch up to you. All the offshore oil rigs and ships in the middle of the oceans will face plenty of problems too. Their metallic composition would simply glow red and melt instantly when in contact with hot lava. And even if it doesn't melt, you better hope nobody happens to be on it. But in any event like that, they would have evacuated everyone. Meanwhile, at the North and South Poles, where the planet is at its coldest, all the ice that was covering the ocean is instantly melting in contact with the lava. It would then cool down and solidify into rocky black landmasses called igneous rocks that are often glassy in texture. The moment the hot lava cools down, huge clouds of acidic steam and gases get released into the air, covering the sky. Scientists call those lays, which is a combination of the words lava and haze. Kinda like when you exit the shower and all the heat comes in contact with the cold outside air, creating a haze, except this one would cover the whole North and South Poles, and it would be super toxic. It sometimes even contains tiny glass particles that are extremely hazardous. And this laze can travel around the world with strong enough wind and cover almost the entire northern hemisphere. It could also cover the southern part of New Zealand, Argentina, South Africa, and Australia. Flying an airplane through this gas wouldn't be the best idea. The heat alone emitted from the lava would be enough to cause major damage to the exterior and affect the airplane's hardware. It's a good thing you found your trusty oxygen container. The air is barely breathable at this point. You make your way to your car and drive away as fast as you can. But even your car's taken some damage. You drive out to the countryside, where the atmosphere hasn't been affected by the lava yet. But even all the way out here, the temperature is changing. The river you used to see on your weekly hikes is drying up. The plants around you are losing their green lush. The animals around have migrated to a different place. Rivers flowing into the ocean would simply create mounds of glassy igneous rocks upon contact, permanently creating natural dams. The rest of the water inland, like in ponds and lakes, would eventually evaporate over time. With the rise in temperatures and no rainfall, it would be the end of water on the planet as we know it. The huge mass of ocean water plays a major role in creating clouds and rainfall. Without water in the atmosphere, the sun's heat would add to the lavas. The world would be a huge barren wasteland. The nights would be hot and the days even hotter.
Hop on the bright side of life together with our brand new tees, hoodies, and more. Click the link to pick your choice.
Still, lava cools down eventually in contact with the cool air. So soon enough, the surface would start forming a thin layer of black crust that would gradually thicken over the years. The thicker the lava, the longer it takes to completely cool down on the inside. It would still be super hot though, but at least if you touch it, you won't be directly touching the burning lava. That's actually how many islands were formed, like the Hawaiian Islands, for example. They're fully formed by lava erupting from below the ocean that dried over hundreds of thousands of years. It accumulated layers over layers of solidified lava from below the ocean until it rose above the surface, forming islands and even mountains. As we speak, a new landmass in Hawaii is being formed by an active volcano. Scientists expect it to be a new fully formed island in about 10,000 years. So now, the view that used to be the blue ocean turned into steamy glowing orange slime that will in turn quickly transform into a solid black wasteland. But don't think you can easily walk over that ocean. It could take hundreds of years for it to fully cool down and turn into solid rock. Until then, walking on that dried lava crust would be similar to walking on a frozen lake, except that in this case, one misstep would cause you to fall into boiling hot lava instead of ice-cold water. Some regions would even take thousands of years to fully solidify. The Mariana Trench, the deepest region of the ocean, is about a whopping 43,000 feet deep. It would actually take at least 5,000 years for that much lava to completely cool down. There are many planets out there that are so-called lava planets. A recently discovered planet, K2-141b, has magma oceans, supersonic winds up to 3,000 miles per hour, and even rocky rains. That's right, the planet is so hot that it vaporizes rocks and rains them back down. Keep in mind that this planet is much closer to the sun than our planet is. Maybe their oceans once turned into lava overnight. As soon as the Earth is cut in half, almost all living creatures will come to an end. An apocalypse will begin, which has not been shown in movies. The atmosphere is damaged, the magnetic field will change, and the planet's landscape completely alters. But the planet will be completely renewed, and life, like a phoenix, will be reborn from the ashes. A super powerful laser would be needed to separate the planet. Such a laser has to receive energy directly from the sun. The weapon goes into space on a rocket, thousands of miles above our world. Then, once the laser arrives at its destination, it opens wide to expose plates of solar panels. The laser absorbs and concentrates the sun's rays. Then a powerful energy beam with the diameter of several cities shoots into the middle of the planet. Oceans through which the beam passes boil and evaporate from the high temperature. These vapors turn into a vast thundercloud in the sky. A strong wind drives these clouds over the continents. Heavy rain falls, which floods not only cities, but entire countries. As the tectonic plates shift, tsunamis are created. Huge waves crash onto the shore. The Earth is split in two. And this is just the beginning. The structure of the Earth, or rather, each half of it, is changing. Strong earthquakes occur all over the world. The worst disasters happen near the fault line. Billions of tons of ground are smashed. Massive landslides drag entire cities below. Chunks of land, thousands of miles in size, shoot away from our planet. All living creatures on these pieces of land fly into outer space. Other broken pieces of the planet land on the half that is closest to them. Imagine a huge rock the size of a whole city falling from the sky, and there will be hundreds or thousands of such stones. Those who live far from the cut site have a chance to survive. But even there, earthquakes will destroy houses. The moon will also start to throw off pieces from itself. These pieces, like a meteor shower, will fall onto the Earth halves and create massive explosions. These explosions will create fires. The skies will be covered with ash, and until it settles, we won't be able to see the sun. Both parts of the planet are drifting away from each other. The red-hot heart of our Earth is right in the center between the two. This is the Earth's core, consisting of molten metals. Each half of the core exudes energy comparable to a star. Between the two parts of the planet, a layer of such hot space is created that nothing can survive there. Any item that falls into this space immediately turns into ashes. The mass of the core is much larger than the ground mass. so there's a higher level of gravity. The core sucks in everything that comes close. You can't travel from one part of the Earth to the other. The core's gravity attracts any shuttle. Each half of the Earth now lives on its own. Typically, the core inside our planet rotates and creates the Earth's magnetic field. This field is a shield that protects us from the sun and space. If the shield is damaged, solar and cosmic radiation passes through the atmosphere. Because the core is divided into two parts, the Earth's magnetic field becomes unstable. Power outages begin in both parts of the planet. Microwaves, TVs, kettles, traffic lights, computers, everything is broken. The screen of your laptop or phone starts turning on and off. The video may freeze and the battery runs out and charges in 1 second. Satellites stop working, which means there will be no more GPS. High-frequency radio waves used for communication stop working, which means you can't make calls and send texts. In fact, all power plants may sink underground or be flooded because of the earthquakes, so there might not be electricity at all. Some people are sensitive to solar storms and experience severe headaches. When the magnetic field is damaged, the surviving people and animals will suffer from severe migraines. Scientists will have to invent special helmets to protect people from the sun. For full protection, people will have to live in underground cities. Compass needles no longer point north. They just spin in different directions. The birds go mad. They don't know where to fly to wait out the winter because the south no longer exists for them. All animals stop migrating. In the sky, planes can't navigate. Plants and flowers can't grow naturally thanks to the increased radiation from the sun. Livestock are poorly fed. The quality of products deteriorates. There's famine. The main goal for people on each half of the planet is survival. In some places, closer to the fault, the Earth's atmosphere is completely damaged. The conditions there will be similar to those in space. There is no air or heat. Only in a spacesuit can you stay in this territory. Unfortunately, you won't be able to jump and fly because gravity still works. Besides, it's gravity that becomes the salvation of our planet. Both parts of the Earth won't fly away from each other because of the force of gravity. Instead, they will rotate and start to attract each other. In 100,000 years, both parts of the planet will reconnect once more, and the Earth will be completely renewed. Since the core is molten metal, it will return to a single heart, but it will take much longer to connect the solid rock of the halves. A scar forms along the entire fault. The scar will be overgrown with forests and flooded with oceans, but there will be strong earthquakes in some places near this scar. By this time, all living things have probably disappeared. On our planet, conditions are about the same as 4.5 billion years ago. Seas and oceans boil, lightning strikes everywhere, tectonic plates change their shape, and lava flows from volcanoes in a rapid stream. The Earth looks like a vast boiling pot, inside which life is gradually created. Because the Earth has decreased in size and the core hasn't changed much, the gravity will be different. On land, it will be more difficult for an ordinary person to walk. They will weigh much more. In such conditions, new, previously unknown life will be created. Today, the world's atmosphere and oceans are polluted. The population is increasing, and glaciers are melting. In the future, things could be much worse for our planet. In 1,000 years, when humanity has mastered space travel, we may decide to change our residence. We'll start looking for other Earth-like planets, and maybe we'll find something. However, nothing compares to our first home, and humanity decides to cure it. Perhaps we'll come up with the idea to divide the planet in half and live on one side. And after 100,000 years, we can come back to a new healthy home. What if you divide other planets? Since they don't have a magnetic field, they won't be as affected. For example, Venus and Mars have no seas, oceans, or lakes. Some scientists think they're entirely dried up because the magnetic field has disappeared there. This led to the complete destruction of the atmospheres of these planets. The solar wind blew across their surface with such force that it dried up all the liquid. The Earth's atmosphere reflects this wind, so thankfully, we're safe. There would be no significant cataclysms on other planets except for earthquakes. Like Earth, the two parts of each world would simply rotate until they reconnect once more.
Woo, that party was wild. You and your friends go out of the club and call a taxi. 10 minutes later, you're all riding in comfort to your homes. From the corner of your eye, while chatting with your buddies, you register that street lights are out already. Although it's 3 a.m. and still dark outside. Whatever. The taxi drops you at your house and speeds away. The driveway is dark as well. Everyone's probably asleep, no wonder. You walk to your front door. The motion-sensitive light doesn't turn on. Now that's weird. The bulb must have blown. You shrug and fumble for your keys in the dark. Gotcha. Now be quiet not to wake everyone. You don't turn on the lights in the hall, take off your shoes, and tiptoe to the bathroom. All you need now is a good shower to wash off the sweat from all that dancing. You click the light switch, and nothing. The light doesn't turn on here either. Now, that's not a coincidence. You briefly think of going to the basement and using the diesel generator, but drop the idea. The thing is too loud. Okay, you'll wash in the dark then. You turn the bath tap, but all it does is gurgle and let out a few grimy drops, and then it goes quiet. Wonderful. No light, no water. The best end of the night ever. Annoyed, you go upstairs to your room, careful not to step on your cat on the way, and fall on the bed without even undressing. What's the point, right? Morning. You wake up feeling yucky. The clothes cling to your body. You desperately need a shower now. You go downstairs to the bathroom, click on the lights without thinking, and it all comes back to you. There's still no light. You check the tap again, no news there either. Just great. Okay, it's 11 a.m. already. Generator it is then. You go to the basement and pour some gas into the tank, then turn it on. It begins roaring loudly, but at least it works. That means you have electricity now. As you go back up, you see your mom's woken up. You explain what's going on and go outside to the nearby store to get some bottled water. On the way, you meet one of your neighbors. He's carrying a gallon bottle of water in each hand. You quickly find out everyone seems to have the same problem. No light, no water. As you turn the corner, even from afar, you can see a line before the store entrance. You have to wait for a full 20 minutes before your turn comes, and you take your own 2 gallons. The cashier informs you in a tired voice that card payments are not available due to power outage. Only cash, please. You roll your eyes and give him $5. Surely it's a temporary inconvenience, nothing more. You go back hauling the bottles. It's been a full month now without electricity and tap water. What started as a nuisance is now turning into a full-blown disaster. Most public venues are closed, as well as factories and even schools. TV isn't working either, obviously, so many people have gone unemployed. You had to drop your studies, helping your parents in the yard. They've been busy growing their own vegetables there. But what really worries you is that there still hasn't been any official announcement about what's happening. People are starting to gather in close communities to help each other. Many of those whose work was related to computers and machines are now learning to survive on their own without the modern conveniences. But even farmers have had it tough. They try to use machines sparingly, saving the fuel, and their work has become increasingly hard. Bottled water is becoming a luxury too. The prices have skyrocketed in the past few weeks, and if it doesn't get better soon, only select few will have access to clean water. At home, you only turn on the diesel generator when it's necessary. to cook food or do a quick cleanup once every few days. At other times, you don't use electricity at all. You're starting to get used to waking up at dawn to catch as much sunlight during the day as possible. When the sun sets, nothing can be done in the darkness, so you either go to sleep after a hard day's work or burn a candle and read a good old-fashioned book. Half a year has passed, nothing's changing, there's still no information about what caused the outage. And people who went on expeditions to other towns return with the same news from everywhere. The problem seems to be global. Getting used to your new lifestyle, you and your parents have reorganized your household. You've got a couple of cows and several chickens for milk and eggs. And your backyard is now a real garden with cucumbers, potatoes, tomatoes, and even apples growing under your supervision. Getting water for drinking and gardening is an ordeal, though. Bottled water has become too rare and extremely expensive. So now you have to go to the river 6 miles away. At first, you traveled there by car, taking as many bottles and canisters as could fit. But after a few months, you've completely run out of gas. So now and your dad walk all the way down there and back. At least you have a cart, so you can haul more than you would with your bare hands, but the journey still takes the best part of a day. The town has become a really friendly and supportive community. Neighbors help each other all the time. And it's become common to have barbecue parties with the whole neighborhood. Everyone's bringing their own food to contribute, and those who aren't coping with natural living yet take home some goods to fill their bellies for several days. Although you're living on the outskirts, almost in the country, it's still unusual how quiet it is without cars driving by. Still, another sound has replaced the engines: hooves clopping along the road. More and more people are riding horses again to get by. The town itself has grown almost empty. People are leaving their apartments to live in the country, and many of them have to unite in tight groups to survive on the plots of land they've procured for themselves. The best spots are, of course, along the riverbanks. That's where most townspeople have concentrated. Some tried to organize posts and sell water from the river, but they were soon put to shame. Free access to water was given to everyone. It's your mom's birthday today. You and Dad have traded some meat and vegetables for a nice bouquet of white roses and strawberries, her favorites. It's the 4th time you celebrate her birthday in this new world. 4.5 years you've been living off the ground, and things are looking better than ever. Your dad talked to the community and the former townspeople by the river, and they agreed to help build an irrigation system. You've dug 3 canals that help water everyone's crops and then return to the main flow. Now, you don't have to travel 12 miles every few days. Also, people from your neighborhood have arranged for communal crops, and you work on your patch every day, sowing, plowing, and harvesting. Afterwards, the harvest is distributed among everyone according to the size of their households. With this system, nobody gets left out, even if they can't work in the field. Surprisingly, you took a liking to this lifestyle. You barely remember what it was like to have a smartphone or to watch TV, but you enjoy the singing of birds every night and working in the fresh air every day. Although it was hard at first, you've now grown tanned and lean and muscular, and both your physical and mental health has improved. You're no longer pursuing deadlines or hurrying anywhere. Your life is now peaceful, and you have a simple purpose: to live and help others. You haven't forgotten your friends either, and you come visit each other often. They come to help you in the field, and in the evenings, you have a dinner together, play cards, and sing songs around the fire. As far as you know, life's never been this simple yet satisfying. Nobody still knows what happened, but it seems to be for the better after all.